D. Mace Vingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, David Janes here with you. Derek Mason out today. He will be back tomorrow, joining Jake Lyman, filling in on Stillman and Company. Jared had to sneak in one more vacation after taking a whole week off, working 3 times in 12 days. Too taxing for Jared Stillman. Love you, Jared.
The patterns of his coming and going, I don't get. I'd have to learn about that a little bit more. But to each their own. And we will move on without our man, without D-Mace.
We will. SEC Media Days continue today, day 3, headlined by Alabama, Florida, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma. Also on the docket for today, Chase and Big Joe are live in Atlanta for SEC Media Days. Our coverage is sponsored by Brewhouse South. Experience Nashville's ultimate sports and brew hangout at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey will join Chase and Big Joe in Atlanta at 12:45. We've also gotten word that David Cutcliffe will join the program. I imagine most of that interview was about Cutcliffe's wonderful 14 years at Duke and nothing else.
Nothing else.
Nothing else.
Nothing
I'm
else
sure
happened
Arch
in his
Manning
career,
didn't
right?
come up at all.
Nothing about the Mannings. Let's talk about Duke. By the way, he went 77 and 97.
Only because
Chase
Chase did the interview and not George Plaster, who goes way, way back with Coach Cutcliffe. I can't say for sure that the Braves came up with the All-Star game in Atlanta. If George were doing the interview, I would have bet anything that the Braves would be maybe the first or second question. Chase being a Braves fan, you can't rule it out, but I don't know.
We shall see when Chase and Big Joe are on from noon to 3.
But he is a fun guy to talk football with. That is for sure.
We did have a major whoopsie at SEC Media Days yesterday. A faux pas. I'll go with whoopsie. A major whoopsie. So as many of you know, as each coach walks to the podium to address reporters at SEC Media Days, they're played onto the stage by their school's fight song. So yesterday, as Texas coach Steve Sarkisian walked onto the stage to the podium, he was accidentally played onto the stage with Texas A&M's fight song.
Big whoopsie.
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
Or was it a prank? Like, was there?
Don't think
was that just like, hey, let's get the let's fuel the rivalry and let's stoke the flames. This is new. They're back in the same conference.
I don't think Sarkisian acknowledged the mistake, but just imagine for a moment, Willie Donick, you're at some sort of Vanderbilt. Well, it wouldn't happen at a Vanderbilt event, but let's say you were at some sort of event and you were the keynote speaker. And it's joining us today, the greatest basketball/baseball player in Vanderbilt history.
That may not be true, by the way.
Class of 1992, right? Class of 1993. 93. Class of 1993. Willie Donick, and then Rocky Top starts playing.
I wouldn't be happy.
How would you feel about that?
It would be very disappointing. I would think somebody would be playing a gag, is what I would think.
Oh man! So
what was his reaction? I didn't.
He did not. He did not react.
He didn't react.
There was no reaction.
Did they catch it and stop it, or did they just not realize it and play it all the way?
I think they played it all the way. I remember seeing the video. They played it all the way, and he's just like, "All right, guys."
No acknowledgement.
No acknowledgement.
Okay. But a major whoopsie at SEC Media Days, playing the Texas A&M fight song for the Texas coach before he addresses reporters at SEC Media Days. But Willie, last night, I know that you are a baseball purist. You love the All-Star game. We were treated to a first-of-its-kind finish in the Major League Baseball All-Star game, a swing-off after the American League rallied from a 6-0 deficit late in the game to tie the game at 6. The National League wins the swing-off, thanks to Kyle Schwarber. Your thoughts on what we watched last night in the Major League Baseball All-Star Game?
First, I think it was great to have a good game. Like that was a good baseball game that had action. The number one thing, honestly, before we get to the swing off, that was the most disappointing thing was the crowd. I did not like the crowd filed out, and it probably should have. I don't want to just blast the Braves fans, the Atlanta fans, but Atlanta as a sports town doesn't have the greatest reputation as great sports fans. Hate to say it. And I'm not one that throws gasoline on that fire all the time. I know better, but it's a fact, right? It was ridiculous. You had a really exciting finish, a great comeback, and little by little, there were not that many people in the stands. I didn't think Joe Davis and John Smoltz as a broadcast team did enough to try to bring up the excitement level to make up for they can't do anything about the crowd, but they were just kind of cruising along. And meanwhile, there's this great comeback happening. I'm like, finally, we have a good All-Star game. Let's get hype a little bit. I honestly didn't know about the swing off. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know anything about it. And neither, by the way, did Kyle Stowers, who was thrown in there to hit. And if you know who Kyle Stowers is, you probably are in a National League only fantasy league like me. Plays for the Marlins. Yes, he's an all-star. He hit 3 home runs in the last game before the all-star break. I guess somebody from the Marlins had to go. And he said in his little interview going to the plate, I didn't know this was a thing.
It was established in 2022. I learned this morning.
Yes. Well, there was a famous tie years ago, and everybody was bummed out about that. It was like, come on, man. They basically ran out of pitchers, and they had to declare a tie, and so they had to do something about it. So the swing off. Look, you and I have covered hockey. I can remember when the shootout came in, and there were a lot of people go, how can you decide a game with a shootout? Well, it's better than a tie, right? So that's what we had. I thought it was very exciting once you got it started. I thought it was good. The thing I didn't like is I thought there should have been a quicker transition from the bottom of the ninth to the start of the swing off. I thought there was too much of a lag. And I think if Major League Baseball, they tried to do it right. They did their stoppages, and Buster Olney chronicled this. They have a number of things they want to do within the game. They honored Hank Aaron. Nothing wrong with that.
Which was awesome.
It was great, yeah.
The Hank Aaron tribute was awesome.
It was great. But you do a number of these different things during the game, and it slows the pace down, and I think it has people leaving. But ironically, this is what was interesting, and I sent you this, Adam, from Buster Olney. Thank goodness for the pitch clock was basically the theme of his tweet. They had the longer commercial breaks that you have in the postseason in games like this, which annoy me big time, because the whole thing about baseball is the tempo. They've tried so hard to get the tempo going, and they've helped it a ton. But you have longer commercial breaks for the big games. They had the swing off, which took extra time, and you got to get the L screen out there to protect the pitcher, right? You got to get all the stuff out there. They lagged there. And why they interviewed each hitter before they came up to the plate, I have no idea why you're doing that. This is a game. You don't need to interview the guy as he goes up to the plate, but they did for all 6 hitters. Not necessary. They had the stand up to cancer pause, which they always do. The Hank Aaron tribute. They had the Freddie Freeman thing, which didn't go over very well. This is, again, where the Braves fan. If I were a Braves fan, I had a little mixed emotions, right? They sent in Pete Alonso to replace Freddie Freeman at first base in the middle of the inning. And Dave Roberts, the Dodgers manager, is like, hey, here's a chance for the Braves fans to salute Freddie Freeman. But he's on the Dodgers. It's been a few years. Like, he's been on the Dodgers for a while. He's a World Series hero for the Dodgers. Is a Braves fan still like, oh, let's have a huge stop the game ovation for Freddie Freeman? I didn't think that was great, but that slows the game down. The game still only lasted 3 hours and 20 minutes. Now, back in the day, before the pitch clock, that game would have lasted well over 4 hours. And we would have been complaining and yawning, and the crowd really would have filed out, I think. So the pitch clock and the pace of the game has helped immensely. I love the product. I still don't think in the big summer showcase that they quite have it right. It was better. They had the uniforms back. They got a really good game. The swing off is good. I got no problem with the swing off because what else are you going to do? The extra innings they're not going to do that anymore. We got to get real. So the swing off is good. We just need to tweak it a little bit. So improvement. But my biggest takeaway was where the heck? Come on, people. You're at the All-Star game. Stay to the end of the game.
Here was the disappointing aspect of the swing off for me. Now, I understand that the Major League Baseball All-Star starters, once they're taken out of the game, they bounce. And the lineup for the swing off was Brent Rooker, Jonathan Aranda, and Randy, is it Arozarena?
Arozarena.
Arozarena versus Pete Alonso, Kyle Schwarber, and Kyle Stowers. Jeff Passan said, what could have been? Aaron Judge, Cal Raleigh, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. versus Shohei Ohtani, Pete Alonso, and Kyle Schwarber. Now, Ohtani and Guerrero and Raleigh and Judge, they may have left the ballpark by the time the swing off occurred. But just imagine how much interest there would have been, even that late at night. If you knew that Aaron Judge was going up against Shohei Ohtani, among others, in a mini home run derby to decide the All-Star game, I would have tuned in for that. And look, it was probably out of the manager's control, but that was a slightly disappointing aspect of the swing off, that the biggest home run hitters, the biggest names were probably gone by then, so they couldn't participate.
I was still confused because I didn't know what the format was. But remember, the National League was one strike away from winning the game in the top of the ninth. So you didn't think you were going to have this. They were up 6-0. So there was no thought in the seventh inning that this was going to be anything but just a rare win for the National League. And thank goodness they won if you're a National League fan, because that would have been another note, losing 11 out of 12. So I think it was thrown together late, or at least in the bottom of the ninth. They had to scramble and say, well, we need 3 guys. The National League with Alonso and Schwarber, those are 2 guys that you would have,
yes,
for sure. And Alonso didn't even have to hit because they had won it, because Schwarber was unbelievable. Hit 3 straight when they were behind. So that was pretty dramatic in itself. But yeah, we would have loved to have seen Ohtani and Judge. I don't know if they had literally left the park, because that does happen sometimes, or it used to happen. You had Tarek Skubal, the starting pitcher for the Tigers, out there in street clothes. He had a collared shirt on. He's just standing there like, who is this guy? He had no baseball hat on or anything. It was like, oh, that's the starting pitcher. He's the best pitcher in the American League. I think it'll take a little getting used to. Who knows? It may be 15 years before you ever do this again. Right? So it wasn't perfect. So I don't know all the reasons why they chose the guys, but Jonathan Aranda, really? That's the guy for the American League of all the guys in that dugout? He didn't even have a hat on. He had a do-rag on. Like, what are you doing? And he hit the top of the wall that would have tied it, which was kind of fun. And so it was the actual way it played out was really cool, but there were some questions as to why they had the guy. Did they ever explain why they had Stowers and Aranda?
If they
no offense to those guys, that's the all-stars, right? Get the guys in there that people know.
If they did, I did not see it. By the way, David James has brought to my attention that SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, who again will join Jason Big Joe today at 12:45, opens today's proceedings with an apology for Texas A&M's fight song being played when Steve Sarkisian took the stage. Now, I can't hear his apology, so I don't know if it's tongue-in-cheek or not, but Sankey has apologized.
He felt the need to address it, I guess.
One texter said, Aggie grads are lame enough to risk their little sound booth job for that cringe, hilarious prank 1,000%. Must be a Texas fan. One hockey-related note. The NHL schedule will be released today, I believe, at noon.
Oh, very exciting.
But the Predators have announced their home opener. The Predators will open this. Well, I don't know if they'll open the season at home, but they will have their home opener October 9th against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So the Predators' home opener for the 2025-2026 season will be October 9th against the Columbus Blue Jackets at Bridgestone Arena. So I don't know if that's their season opener. They may start on the road. The full schedule comes out at noon, but the Predators will open the season they will open the home portion of their schedule. I do have to keep doing this. They will open the home portion of their schedule October 9th against Columbus at Bridgestone Arena.
I'm excited to see the schedule. We know in there is a trip to Sweden for the Global Series. It's not at the beginning of the season like it was a few years ago when the team went to Prague and Bern for the preseason. That might have been the most fun part, to see Roman Josi play in his hometown and the way the crowd reacted to that. So it is going to be a unique season because you have the Stockholm trip and an Olympic break in the middle of the season. So it's going to be very compressed. There's going to be a lot of stretches, I'm sure, of 3 games in 4 nights and 4 and 6 and all of that. So depth will be important.
So that means you'll be headed to Sweden, yes?
I don't know officially if that's the case. Most of the time, those games are not picked up by national broadcasts. And so if that's the case, I think my chances are good.
You will have to do the show from Sweden.
Oh, we have to.
You will do the show from Sweden. Did you do the show from Prague?
I did some of the shows from Prague but it was the time change made it a little difficult, a little bit difficult. We will try.
Let's see what time
there were some on-air things from Prague, but I don't know if it was broadcast excellence. I might have been half asleep. I don't know if it was it's like 10 or 11 p.m. or something. I think
Stockholm is 7 hours ahead of us. So that means you'll be
similar to Prague, I think.
You'll be on with us at 6 o'clock p.m. in Sweden.
Okay. Hey, that's drive time in Sweden.
Josh on our text line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com, says, I think they wanted to use guys that were more on the Savannah Bananas level instead of actual MLB All-Stars. Another texter says, the Major League All-Star game will never matter again unless they bring back the rule that it decides World Series home field. Dumbest decision baseball has ever made. Had the only All-Star game in pro sports that mattered outside the Cup All-Star race, and they ruined it.
Well, that wasn't the rule until after the tie. After the tie in whatever year that was, 2003 or 2004, John Smoltz was talking about he was actually in that game. That's when they came up with the rule. And by then, I think people would argue that it had already started to lose the luster in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. It was such a big, big thing before cable really took off and before you really had a chance to see the best players a whole lot, other than the odd game of the week. Maybe when I was a kid, Monday Night Baseball, you'd have a chance to see more of the guys. It was such a big showcase, and you had a massive, massive audience. So I don't know that that's it. I would like to see a little more intensity in the game. I do not like at all the mic'd up player in the field. I don't like it. Never have. Especially the pitcher and the catcher is what they did in the first inning. Tarik Skubal, I don't think it's a coincidence. The guy hadn't given up a run all year. The guy's unbelievable, and he gives up 2 runs in the first inning. And he's trying to make sense of the fact that his catcher, the announcers, and himself are mic'd up. They're trying to have a conversation. He's trying to get Shohei Ohtani and Ronald Acuna out. If I were pitching, I'd be like, I'm not signing up for that. Oh, it's the All-Star game. Don't worry about it. No. I'm trying to win. I don't want to get embarrassed. I'm trying to get Shohei Ohtani out. And you're telling me I have to hear in my ears Joe Davis and John Smoltz laughing and say, hey, Tarik, that was a nice pitch you had right there. Come on. I did not like that at all. Let's play a game. So I'm with the caller on that. I don't think it has anything to do with the home field advantage. I don't really care one way or the other on that. If you want to do it, fine. But let's play a game. This is baseball. You can play a real game where everybody goes hard and competes, which is what they used to do. You could always get hurt even if you're not going hard. So there's no reason not to compete. So I want to see the intensity level go up a little bit.
Hair Middle Henry on our text line says, Willie has to go to Sweden so he can bring you guys back some official fish and meatballs. I'm not sure fish will travel across the Atlantic Ocean well, so maybe not the fish, probably not the meatballs either.
If they were packaged somehow, maybe I can consult Philip Forsberg and some of his friends over there.
Mhm.
If I could package it frozen or something and assure you that it would preserve, would you be interested?
If I knew I wasn't going to get sick eating it, I would be open
Perhaps.
to it.
You like fish?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll see what we can do.
Six
I'll
one,
bring you some sort of trinket from Sweden if I am honored enough to go.
and just by
Fortunate
my
enough.
quick search of social media, just based on the date of the Predators home opener, I'm going to guess that is also the season opener.
You think so?
October 9th at home against Columbus. But the full NHL schedule,
What's the first day of the season? They announced that the other day, right? The opening night,
that would have been that Wednesday, October 7th
the 7th.
is a Tuesday. So the Predators home opener will be on a Thursday,
Okay.
unless they are starting with a back-to-back, which I don't know how often that would
So
happen.
they don't play Tuesday. We know that, right?
Right. They play their home opener is that
Right.
Thursday.
So it would need to be a game in like St. Louis the night before,
Right.
which is probably unlikely. They
Right.
usually don't do that.
So if I had to guess, the home opener will also be the season opener for the Predators October 9th against the Columbus Blue Jackets, but the full NHL schedule will be released at noon.
Now we'll see if they yank it from us like they did last time. Put it on ESPN Plus and we don't get to do it. That was such a buzzkill last year. You're at the first game. All right. And ESPN is doing it. And we're sitting in the stands.
Hair Metal Henry says you should bring back Swedish fish, the candy. We know that will travel well across the Atlantic Ocean. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Coming up next, our favorite dual threat quarterback, Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst.
Hold on. Adam.
Yes.
I think we've been had. Somebody just texted, said Swedish fish. Like, are we talking about actual fish or the candy Swedish
Well,
fish?
Hair Metal Henry was talking about the fish and said, "Come on, man. I've been
I
duped."
do really like Swedish fish.
I like them too, but I've been
They're
duped.
pretty good.
That's okay. We're all taken every once in a while. Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN.
I'm bringing a real fish back. There
Okay.
are real fish in Sweden. I'm bringing it back, and it will be a delicacy. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And we will put it's just this kind of a appetizer around it. Some Swedish fish as well because they're good.
So take that, Henry.
Take that, guy.
615-737-1025. Tim Hasselbeck,
We're off to a great
ESPN
start.
NFL analyst and head coach of the Ensworth Tigers, will join us next as training camps rapidly approach. The Titans report to training camp in 6 days. We will talk about all of that with Tim coming up next. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace Vingen and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Adam Vingen. Pleased to be joined on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com, by our favorite dual threat quarterback. He's an ESPN NFL analyst. He's also the head coach of the Ensworth Tigers football team. It's Tim Hasselbeck. Hello, Tim. How are you?
We're doing great. How you guys doing?
We are doing well, thank you. So I imagine that you have spent a lot of time discussing the top 10 quarterback list that Jeremy Fowler compiled earlier this week with help from League People at ESPN.com. What was the most surprising element of that list to you when you read it for the first time?
That Jaden Daniels was at like 4.
He was at 5, yeah.
At 5? Yeah, he was so high. Like, I mean, in front of guys like Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts, who just won a Super Bowl. I mean, so I think that, yeah, like that for me, I would say, a bit of an aggressive move. So, I think that one surprised me. I don't know if I had any other ones, like Hurts to me being at 9, right? Do I have it right that he's at 9?
Yes. I was just about to ask you about him. So yes, he's at 9.
Yeah. I mean, guy's been at 2 Super Bowls. It's like, so, and I think there are elements to say, look, if you were to move him and you were to put Hurts in Detroit and Jared Goff in Philadelphia, like what would the end result be? Like, so I get it that, that like there are probably some things that you're splitting hairs and you don't know, and that's projections, but that it feels to me like some disrespect.
I was going to ask you about Jalen Hurts because he landed at 9 on this list. The highest ranking he received was 6. The lowest ranking he received was unranked. So somebody who did this exercise for Jeremy Fowler did not have Jalen Hurts ranked on this list. And as you said, he's a Super Bowl winner who plays big in big moments. As it's written here at ESPN, he's the most potent short yardage quarterback rusher in NFL history. Yeah. He's also one of the game's most accurate passers. And yet, as you said, there seems to be a lot of disrespect. There's a passage at the end of this that I would love your opinion on. Fowler wrote, quote, "More than a few voters see shades of a Russell Wilson career arc. Hurts has many traits that contribute to winning at a high level, but needs a steady running game around him and wouldn't necessarily thrive in a pass-heavy system." So what's it going to take for Jalen Hurts to get more respect?
Well, by the way, like a Russell Wilson career arc, like Russell Wilson for a period of time, like was playing like an MVP candidate. Like, I don't know what'll happen when it's all said and done as these passing numbers, go crazy and stuff. But like does Russell Wilson, I'm not saying Russell Wilson's a Hall of Famer, but like he's going to be up for consideration at some point. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's, that seems weird to me to be like, hey, like that wouldn't be good. There was definitely a period of time where Russell Wilson was a top 5 quarterback, like 100%. So like that's a weird comment to me. The idea that he's unranked, and look, Jeremy, is well connected, knows a lot of people and all that stuff. I mean, that's crazy to me. Like, I would love to know what organization that person works, for, and if they are any good. Like, it doesn't make sense. We were talking about it on NFL Live yesterday, and one of the things I said was, as we evaluate quarterbacks, like, I think we would all agree is leadership is maybe one of the most important qualities for a quarterback. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Like, are there a bunch of guys leading better than Jalen Hurts is leading? Like I compared him to Eli Manning. I used to say, like, with Eli, he was so steady, he was so consistent, and his leadership was really unquestioned because, like, you never knew if his dog died or he won the lottery. Like that's kind of how he was every day. And I think Jalen Hurts the same way. Like, if you look at the way Jalen Hurts leads, like he's unfazed. He's not flustered by things. And so, like, the idea that I don't know. Like Kyler Murray is probably ranked by everybody with his leadership style, and Jalen Hurts is not ranked by everyone. That's wild to me.
Tim, I want to ask you about Jauan Jennings. There was a report earlier this week that the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver, also a former member of the Tennessee Volunteers, wants a new contract or a trade. And of course, a lot of Vols fans in our area, our text line was blowing up with people clamoring for the Tennessee Titans to make a run at Jauan Jennings. But Willie and I were curious about how Jennings would perform outside of San Francisco, outside of the Kyle Shanahan system, scheme, whatever you want to call it. So assuming that Jennings is indeed wanting to be moved, do you think that if he were to leave San Francisco, he would be how good of a wide receiver do you think he could be outside of San Francisco is the question I'm asking.
I don't know that I wouldn't say that he's a number one wide receiver, but I think that he's a starting wide receiver. I think, the size, the physicality, the ability to make contested catches, a willing and capable blocker, like all of those things. I think that he's I think I don't think the system is making the player with him, Now, you look at what's going on with receiver money, like like maybe there are a bunch of number two wide receivers out there they're going to be looking for, number one wide receiver money. And like that, I think is just not, there are some guys that can find themselves in some tough spots if they're trying to accomplish that.
Tim
He may
Hasselbeck
fit that mold.
Tim Hasselbeck is with us. And Tim, that brings you to sort of the dilemma that the Titans are in, because your options, if you were to go down this path, because it's easy for especially somebody here in this market who watched Jauan Jennings play in Knoxville, maybe watched him in high school right around the corner. Like, hey, bring him here. You need wide receivers. And that looks to be true, right? He's better than a lot of the guys they have on the roster for sure. But are you going to give up an asset? And if so, how much would you be willing to part with? And then are you just taking him for 1 year? Or are you going to commit to, as you kind of just alluded to, the next contract in a wide receiver market that you got to pay pretty handsomely for?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, like, are you going and chasing Jauan Jennings? And what kind of leverage does he have to really say, like, hey, no, I'm not playing without a new contract? Like when Terry McLaurin says, I'm not playing without a new contract, then at that point, what you can say is, look, we're trying to accomplish big things here, and we can't because, our number one wide receiver is holding out. And so, like, when that happens, I think you have to say, like, all right, maybe we've got to make a concession here to get this deal done. Like, I don't think you need to do that when you're talking about, like, that next tier of wide receiver. I think you say, like, you're not going to hold out because that's going to be way too expensive for you. And quite honestly, just it won't make sense.
I'm curious, as we look at some of the storylines we're going to see in training camp, I'm curious about the Lions and their attempt to bounce back after just an amazing regular season and then the bad playoff game. The Titans fans can relate, right? You have this great season, you set yourself up, and then you don't play well in the big game. So what do you, when you look at that young roster that still looks like it's in a window where you can win, what do you expect from them?
Say the team again?
The Lions.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, the change at coordinator, I think, is the big issue there. You look at teams that have changed both coordinators. Obviously, Philly did a good job of it last year. They were terrible at it, the previous time they did it. Look at Dallas did it a few years ago. They were awful with it. It's a lot. Coaching matters. So, look, I think that, Dan Campbell's going to kind of show his, head coaching ability in terms of how he helps manage that entire situation. And, look, I think they have good players. But, like, they didn't just lose coordinators. They also lost, guys that were also on the coaching staff. So I think that change is hard. I think the division is difficult. And I think because of that, I do think we'll see a bit of a step back out of Detroit.
What about what you see with Mike Vrabel and the Patriots? I'm sure the sideshow here, like if there's a team outside of the Titans, people will be watching closely in this market. I think you could argue that the Patriots will be pretty high on the list. Maybe the other division teams, etc. But there's a lot of curiosity on Mike Vrabel in his second coaching stint.
Yeah, I think it's a massive upgrade at the coaching position in New England. And then I think beyond that, what you're getting is Josh McDaniels to coach the offense. And I think there's better talent than there was there a year ago. So I think when you add all of those things together, what were they, a 3-win team? Now you got what was a 3-win team that could easily, may be a hard out for everybody that they play. So I look, sometimes everyone jumps on a team too early. That may be New England, but I do think the 2-3 year forecast on New England is really good.
You've done a lot of ACC games over the years, so you have a perspective that's unique in this market where we're so tied into SEC day in and day out, week in and week out. As you try to sort out what the next playoff is going to look like, if you're representing the ACC, what do you want to see in there with the leverage that they have or don't have?
Well, I mean, I think what you'd want to see is, obviously you'd be guaranteed that you're going to have one of your teams in it, right? I mean, I think that you got to start there. The idea that there would even be a chance to have more than one team in it, you would like to say that, but like truthfully, like you look at what happened to Florida State. Obviously there were some injuries and stuff like that. Like, yeah, look, I think top to bottom, the conference in general has just got to get better football. Like when you have schools like Clemson and Florida State, like not really being shy about the idea that like, look, we want out, like this TV deal is not the deal we want, then like, I don't like, to me, when that starts happening, when like the best teams in your conference are saying that, then, I think it's hard for you to even, create a case, for anything, anything more than you're kind of naturally getting, from the committee as it stands now.
Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, head coach of the Ensworth Tigers, joining us here on D. Mace, Vengen, and Donick as he does every week. Tim, great stuff as always. We'll catch up next week.
Sounds good. See you, folks.
Tim Hasselbeck on the program. 615-737-1025. I do have a question for all you Titans fans out there, which I will ask you coming up next. But before we get there, go to thegamenashville.com/deals now. First, actually, let me go back because I forgot a line. Don't miss out on some of Nashville's best deals. Then go to thegamenashville.com/deals now, and you can purchase half off on gift cards for Mellow Mushroom, Red's Hot Chicken, Beach Bend Amusement Park and Splash Lagoon Water Park, Single Tree Barbecue, 312 Pizza, Bad Axe Throwing, Brewster's, Barrio Burrito Bar, and many more. The Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix is coming to the Nashville Superspeedway on Labor Day weekend, and 1025 The Game has your chance to win VIP tickets to the IndyCar race. Text in the word RACE, R-A-C-E now, to 615-737-1025 to be entered to win a pair of VIP tickets. For more information on the event, visit MusicCityGP.com. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan here with you. My question to all of you Titans fans out there, also at 615-737-1025, who is the most important non-quarterback for the Titans this coming season? Again, who is the most important non-quarterback for the Titans this coming season? CBS Sports did this exercise recently and did it for every team. And Willie, I'll admit, I was a bit surprised by CBS's choice for the Tennessee Titans. It was Dan Moore. Dan Moore, according to CBS Sports, is the most important non-quarterback for the Titans this season. The author writes, quote, last year's number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, came into his rookie season with a supporting cast that looked strong on the surface, but was revealed not to be, thanks to a combination of porous offensive line play, dreadful play calling, and scheming. The Titans have surrounded this year's number 1 pick, Cam Ward, with a similar-looking cast of players, and they'll be hoping that their investment on Dan Moore to protect Ward's blind side pays off so that he can have a normal rookie year rather than having to run for his life as often as Williams did during his own debut campaign. They also hope that Ward will do a better job of playing on time than Williams did, who often exacerbated the line issues by holding the ball for way too long. So CBS Sports says that Dan Moore is the most important non-quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a sensible pick. I wouldn't have gone there. I'm going to go in a different direction, but I see exactly what he's saying. So much is riding on giving Cam Ward a chance to develop. Give him a chance, and by doing that, you have to protect him. You have to have better offensive line play. And I don't think Will Levis can look back and say, well, if we had a better offensive line, I would have done better. I think there was too much on Will Levis for that. But at the same time, it's so important in the developing stage of the number 1 pick, and they have put so many eggs in Cam Ward's basket that it's worth doing whatever you can to support him, even at the expense of the defense. But as D. Mace has pointed out, playing good defense is a way to support a rookie quarterback. So I am going to say Jeffrey Simmons is by far the most important guy for 2 reasons. A, if you want to have a good defense, he's got to have a great year. But also, I am going to continue to sing this song. And I may be going against the grain because it's hard to do. But Jeffrey Simmons is the only guy that can get you, now that you've drafted Cam Ward, he's the only guy that can get you anything close to the number of picks that you want to have, which they have said they want to have. And I'm going to keep reminding them that they said it because they said, well, the picks don't matter. If you've got the guy, if you got your quarterback, you take him with the first overall pick. That's fine. But they passed on a treasure chest of picks. But now that they've passed on that, I think they really have to wrap themselves around the idea of trading Jeffrey Simmons. But for them to get good return for Jeffrey Simmons, they need a good season for Jeffrey Simmons. Now that they've already gone through the window of the offseason, I think even a trade deadline deal this year, which I don't know how much teams would be willing to part in the middle of the season. I don't know when they may have missed their window to trade him, to be honest. But either way, he needs to be what he can be, what he has been, and be the return on the investment that they hope he will be. He's such an important player. I don't see how it can't be Jeffrey Simmons.
I think that's probably the right answer, but I dug a little bit more into Dan Moore, especially after the author at CBS Sports pointed out what Caleb Williams endured last season. Caleb Williams was sacked 68 times last season. Let me repeat that. 68 times. Tied for the 3rd most in NFL history. David Carr with the Texans 76 sacks taken in 2002.
I remember that.
Randall Cunningham, 72 sacks taken in 1986 with the Eagles. By the way, David Carr, I should say, also took 68 sacks in 2005. So Caleb Williams tied David Carr in 2005 with 68 sacks, tied for the third most in NFL history. Man, David Carr took a beating, huh?
He did.
Jeez. And Dan Moore comes in. He is paid handsomely in free agency. That tends to happen in free agency. They put him at left tackle. They move J.C. Latham to the right side. And I'm curious about one thing when it comes to Dan Moore. So when the Titans signed Dan Moore, we did our research, and I rely on next gen stats. You may rely on Pro Football Focus or some other statistical service. And each service has its own way of defining fault for a sack. According to Next Gen Stats, Dan Moore Jr. allowed 16 and a half sacks last season, the most among any offensive lineman with at least 200 pass blocking snaps. Now, I did not go back and watch all 16 and a half sacks that he allowed, apparently. I don't know how many he was at fault for versus either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. But that is a big number. And Caleb Williams ended up having an impressive statistical season, despite the fact that he was sacked, again, 68 times. He threw for more than 3,500 yards, had 20 touchdown passes, and just 6 interceptions. But being sacked that many times is not a recipe for success. So, as you said, Willie, it's important that Cam Ward stays upright and is not under constant siege by opposing rushers. So that's why I know that Jeffrey Simmons is the sensible choice. I think Dan Moore on offense outside of Cam Ward, because again, it's the most important non-quarterback. I think Dan Moore is an appropriate choice.
Yeah, and I think it's just like anything when you're talking about an offensive line, the offensive line is linked, right? The group of 5. It's not only what Moore does individually, but what does it do to strengthen the overall offensive line? So let's put aside the question of Cushenberry coming back from a serious injury in the Achilles, which we don't know when we're going to see him. But just the move of Moore and then Latham over to the right, what does that do to the overall strength of the offensive line? That is really the question. And if you all of a sudden, the domino effect of Moore being solid and then Latham taking a jump, being on the right side, now just at those two positions, you've got a big net gain. So I'm looking at that as a big thing. Could that be the move, right, that suddenly takes the offensive line into at least middle of the pack and not at the bottom of the NFL, where every game you go into, you're thinking, oh my gosh, can we block? What plays can we run? Can we protect the quarterback? Is our quarterback going to get killed? These are all the things that if they can avoid those questions and go into games at least confident that they have a chance to block and run the plays they want to run and give the rookie a chance, that's a big thing.
615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Who is the most important non-quarterback for the Tennessee Titans this coming season? Let us know. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace, Finn, Gendonic, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, David James here with you. Derek Mason out today. He'll be back tomorrow, joining Jake Lyman on Stillman and Company as Jared takes yet another vacation before Titans training camp, which starts a week from yesterday. That's at least when Titans rookies and veterans report. So an article on CBSSports.com, the most important non-quarterback for each team in the NFL. Who is the most important non-quarterback for the Tennessee Titans this season, in your opinion? 615-737-1025. The author of this story, whose name is Jared Dubin, who David James points out has bears a striking resemblance to Big Joe Dubin. I don't know if Big Joe has a long-lost son named Jared. I guess we'll ask him.
We'll find out. Hopefully.
We'll find out. They do.
I'm sure that is being speculated throughout Atlanta right now at the SEC Media Days of the College Football Hall of Fame. Hey, Jared Dubin? Who is this? Is he related to Big Joe?
By the way, our SEC Media Days coverage is sponsored by Brewhouse South. Experience Nashville's ultimate sports and brew hangout at Brewhouse South and Cool Springs. So I do want to focus on Dan Moore because the author of the story mentioned that last season, Caleb Williams, in his rookie season with the Chicago Bears, was running for his life quite a bit. Now, even Caleb Williams acknowledged that some of the 68 sacks that he took were on him. But this stood out to me, Willie. So Caleb Williams, his average time to throw last season was 2.92 seconds. Again, 2.92 seconds, which ranked 7th in the NFL.
7th longest.
7th longest.
Meaning he holds the ball.
Yes. 2.92 seconds. By comparison, Will Levis averaged 2.68 seconds to throw the ball.
Yes, and I think he came under a lot of criticism because he held the ball too long. A lot of the sacks, I think we ended up having to debate. The offensive line was bad, but Will Levis did hold the ball. You put those two together, you got a lot of sacks.
So keep these numbers in mind. Caleb Williams, the average time to throw last season, when he took, again, 68 sacks.
Right.
2.92 seconds. Will Levis last season, who took 41 sacks in 12 games, 2.68 seconds. According to ESPN, Cam Ward's average time to throw at Miami, 2.91 seconds. So virtually identical to Caleb Williams last season. I found that to be interesting when having the conversation about the offensive line and the protection and the importance of Dan Moore, that Cam Ward, his average time to throw was basically the same average time to throw of Caleb Williams.
But one is at the college level and one is at the pro level.
Yes.
So we have to make sure everybody understands that. This is radio, right? We're not putting a big chart in front of you. And because the college, it just illustrates how different the college game is. I would be curious what Williams was at USC if it was close to that. Because in college, I think it's much easier for a quarterback who can move, like Williams and like Ward, to extend plays. And you want them to hold the ball more. And it's going to lead to good things because you can elude the rush. In the NFL, it's, as Williams found out, it's a lot more difficult. There were some plays that Williams made that were pretty spectacular, of him running around, extending plays, and then throwing it. That's gonna change that average.
I do,
but
have
it wasn't super efficient for Williams, though.
It appears that number for Caleb Williams in his final season at USC was 3.21 seconds.
Interesting. So I don't know if that meant that he was scrambling a lot, extending plays that way, or his line was that good that they could hold the ball. It could be a number of different things. But by and large, I think what we want to see from Ward is, can he be better than Levis at getting the ball out quick? And as D. Mace has pointed out a lot, DeAndre Hopkins and the way they had the offense, it sort of slowed down the offense. I think Brian Callahan, if you look at the way way they did it in Cincinnati for all those years, he would prefer an offense for a number of different reasons to get the ball out quicker. And so can they get a quicker offense? Can they get a better tempo to the offense where it's more rhythmic and you're not putting your quarterback in a position? Now, how do you do that? Number one, you got to stay out of the long situations, 2nd and 9, 3rd and 8, because then you have to call the deep drops. And that's where Will Levis was a sitting duck, right? He was going to hold too much, and you had the disastrous right tackle situation and a rookie left tackle. And we know what the results were, right? So this goes back to, can Dan Moore give you steady play? He doesn't have to be great, but can he be a good left tackle? And can Latham be an enormous upgrade from Nicholas Petit-Frere, John Ojokwu, Leroy Watson, and whoever else you want to name who got a turn playing right tackle? Because it screwed up the whole offense. So I think that number, the 2 whatever it is something that we should watch throughout the year.
By the way, according to Fantasy Points data, which was retweeted into my timeline, the best pressure to sack ratios since 2021. Dead last at 120th, Will Levis in 2024, 32.3%. So 32.3% of his pressures turned into sacks.
So what was Williams?
They don't have that number.
Yeah. Well, Williams is probably not far
available
behind, but it just shows you that that's the stat, is the percentage of dropbacks that you end up getting sacked.
Well, I can do that quick math if you give me a minute. I can do that quick math for you. It's not readily available. But this was interesting. This was a story written before the draft about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders holding the ball. And Craig Johnson, a longtime NFL assistant and quarterbacks coach for over 2 decades, was quoted as saying, when a quarterback comes into the league, he simply thinks, I am faster, more athletic, or elusive than the people chasing me. But you have to learn quickly that being late anywhere in the NFL is where the trouble starts. You want creators with off-schedule ability, but the clock runs out for everybody. Now, Cam Ward is also quoted in this story. So I think this was Jeff Legwold wrote this story.
Former member of the Tennessee and alumni, just like yourself.
Yes. Ward's play style resulted in an FBS leading 39 touchdown passes last season, and the fiery competitiveness that took him from a 0-star recruit at FCS school Incarnate Word in 2020 to 4th in the Heisman voting at Miami in 2024 shows when he's asked whether he waits too long to throw. At the end of the day, if you have time in the pocket, why would I not hold the ball and let my receivers get open, Ward said. If you ever make plays out of structure, of course, you're going to hold the ball and try to make a play and get your receivers open.
And I think there are great quarterbacks. And I think of Ben Roethlisberger. I think Patrick Mahomes, right? He can hold it a little longer. There are times where that's good. But I still think over the course of the season, that number's got to get knocked down. It's just not going to be like it was in college. And that is going to be part of the growth process that every rookie that comes into the league, I don't care what offense you ran in college, but you got to learn that. The ball has to get out.
By my quick math, Caleb Williams' sack to pressure ratio was 26.2%. He was sacked 68 times on 260 pressures. So more than a quarter.
Yeah. I'm looking at Pro Football Reference. They have a stat called sack percentage, just the number of sacks that you took compared to the number of dropbacks you had. So Deshaun Watson had the worst in only 7 starts, so he barely qualified. 13.2% he was sacked on dropbacks. Will Levis was 11.99, second worst, and Caleb Williams right behind him at 10.79. So I think Williams and Levis are a good benchmark for Ward as kind of like that's the floor. Like Ward has got to be above that floor just to get the discussion started. There's going to be times he struggles. I think we all know that. But it's his ability and also the offensive line's improvement. Those two things will be a big, big thing to watch to see what that number ends up being. 2.x. If he can get it closer to 2.5, that would be a big victory. I think that would mean good things.
I'm looking at the leaders in time to throw last season. Lamar Jackson, number 1 on the list, 3.14 seconds. That's no surprise because he is quite elusive. Right behind him, Jalen Hurts at 3.13. Sam Darnold at 3.08. They were the only qualified quarterbacks who averaged more than 3 seconds to throw the ball. CJ Stroud, 2.97. Anthony Richardson, 2.95. Brock Purdy, 2.93. Caleb Williams, 2.92. And again, according to ESPN, Cam Ward.
Brock Purdy was that high. I'm surprised that Purdy would be up there that high.
According to ESPN, Cam Ward last season at Miami was at 2.91.
Okay.
Which would have put him tied with Justin Herbert and Bo Nix last season in the NFL.
Where was Mahomes?
Mahomes was 16th, tied for 15th at 2.81, tied with Kyler Murray at 2.81.
Okay. That's interesting just to get a reference. I would have thought, because you always say, like, when you do the drills, when you go to training camp and they're doing 2.5, I think is right around what you want, ideally, the ball to come out at. But things affect that number, right? The designed rollouts or times that you're just eluding the rush and extending the play the way you should. But a basic drop back, you want to have a lot. You want to ask your line to protect for 2.5 seconds before the rush comes in there. I would bet that it wasn't so good. The Titans offensive line didn't grade very well.
No,
in that area.
Not. The qualified quarterback out of 36 qualified quarterbacks with the shortest time to throw on average was Tua at 2.42 seconds.
And you think about the offense of Miami, it's really predicated on the quick release, the quick reads, those slants that they hit you with.
Mm-hmm. As this quarterback's coach, Craig Johnson, was quoted in this story from Jeff Legwold, the toughest lesson is really that as a quarterback, you have to earn the right to hold the ball a little longer. You want guys who make plays. You want guys who make some plays off schedule, not guys who are just always off schedule, and that is the lesson.
That's the point.
And you play a long time.
That is a really good synopsis of what you're looking for.
In terms of the most important non-quarterback, Joey from Gallatin on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com, says, for me, it has to be Jeffrey Simmons to be a better leader on the defense and to improve on his game from last year. If he can improve and leave everything outside of the field alone, it will help a lot.
I can't wait to see how this goes in. There's a lot of levels to it, and I think we have to try to keep it the context of they don't have Michael Irvin, et cetera, out on the outside, right? They don't have this great gifted wide receiver core, but I think the structure of the offensive line, getting the ball out, and maybe hopefully a steady running game to go with it. Do you have a foundation of a good offense that you could build off of?
Wes in Clarksville says, has anyone went and looked at all of Levis's sacks and seen if it was more the offensive line's fault, or did he just not get rid of the ball? Wes, I am not a masochist. I am not going to go back and watch all of Will Levis's sacks from last season. I don't want to relive that. I'm sure somebody has done that. You're asking the wrong guy.
Well, Jared does have the film room.
Jared's film room when he's not on vacation.
Okay. Does he go into the film room during vacation? Is that possible?
Jared definitely is I get the vibe that Jared is he still works while he's on vacation. He's just not on the air, but he's still doing work.
And he's very quick to tell you that you are not allowed to talk about any fun things you did on your vacation. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. I think that is an exercise, though, to Wes's question, that I think they have spent a lot of time. If they weren't, I'm sure they were every week during the season, but since the season, when you're trying to break down what went wrong, I'm sure there was a ton of time devoted to that exact question: is what's on Levis, what's on the line, and how do we make it better? First, by replacing Levis is but also the moves they made in the offensive line, I'm sure, had to do with that. And we will have a question, because last year we asked the question, the 10 Titans questions: how many sacks will they give up this year? Can they get that number cut down significantly?
Wes says Jared would do the Will Levis film
Jared
study.
would do it. The question was, would his football eye be able to tell you? Because you can't always, we don't know what the name of the play was, what the design of the play was, and sometimes it may look like a guy blew an assignment, but you might learn something. There may be something you don't know about that. Jared assumes he knows all about every play that's called.
Someone much smarter than me would need to do that exercise. For example,
we could take a shot at it, right?
I would like to go back and look at the 16 and a half sacks that Dan Moore allowed according to Next Gen Stats and be able to place blame on either Moore or one of the Steelers quarterbacks. I'm not sure I have a discerning enough eye to
Right.
be able to do that.
But I think I found myself, and you probably did as well, at times watching the game last year and saying, now there's a sack, but that was Levis. That was Levis stepping up in a pocket. We talked a lot about, this is something we haven't covered in this segment, but we did talk about this element on the time it takes to throw. There were times I thought that Levis stepped up into pressure. There's a great characteristic that the really good quarterbacks have, the feel of the pocket, where it always seems like, oh, they're going to get him, but the really good quarterback slides up and gives himself that extra second. Like Dan Marino was so good at it. A lot of guys who weren't great mobile running quarterbacks sometimes are really good at sliding up in the pocket. Brady was really good at it. Levis was the opposite. So it's not even necessarily that he wanted to hold the ball. He was trying to step up and make a throw, but he didn't have a feel for the rush, where the rush was coming from. And so I thought he stepped into a lot of sacks.
615-737-1025. So, Wes, if you or anybody else out there derives pleasure from experiencing humiliation, you can go back and watch all Will Levis' sacks from last season and get back to me. But I am not a masochist, so I am not going to do that. 615-737-1025. I do want to focus on one specific member of the Titans offensive line, because this one specific member of the Titans offensive line does get a lot of heat. And I want to discuss him coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan here. Talking Titans. I want to shift gears here, Willie, to a member of the Tennessee Titans offensive line who's a bit of a punching bag for a certain section of Titans fans.
Well, there's a long line of them.
There is. By the way, before we get to that, I just have to laugh at this. So Ian Safar sends a grid of the Robbie and Rex Road program. He sends it to us at the end of every show, just so that we know what Robbie and Joe talked about. I just have to laugh at this. 6 o'clock, show open, / update on Joe's gout. So is the first thing that Robbie and Joe do every morning, do we get an update on Joe's gout? Now, I'm usually up that early, and I listened to the beginning of the show. I turned it on around 6:05 today, so maybe I missed the gout update. I missed the gout update. But is this a thing, Joe and Robbie, that you're doing every day? We need a Joe gout update? How is that not sponsored, by the way?
Back in the day,
I don't know, man.
When I lived in the Eastern time zone, I would get up and get the scores from the West Coast, that weren't not in the morning paper.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go to Sports Center, you had to watch I had to find out who won the late games. So this is very similar. People wake up in this town, they need to know the gout update at 6 a.m.
Do they, though?
Yes, of course. We need to know how his gout is.
Oh, boy. Well, there is a sponsorship opportunity for any medical service out there. Joe's Gout update sponsored by you. It's a great opportunity. I'm trying to sell ads while we're on the air. I don't know if Ian has unveiled the Gout Man and Robbie theme song that I suggested recently.
Right.
Gout Man. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Gout Man.
Okay, so this is part of the sponsorship. Here
Yes.
is the Gout Man song. So that plays, and then you give the update. Have you ever heard the update of gout? Like, what would be an update? Possible update.
Usually it's Robbie just going, "Hey Joe, how's your gout?" "Oh, it's fine," and that's it.
That's it.
We don't get.
We need more.
It didn't flare up today.
I just thought it was funny. Show open / update on Joe's gout / SEC Media Days. So we have to get the gout update before we get to SEC Media Days. Okay, that sidebar is now over. I want to talk about Peter Skoronski, who is the aforementioned punching bag among many Titans fans. So, as we've discussed over the past week or so, Jeremy Fowler is rolling out all of his lists of the top players in every position, according to league executives, coaches, and scouts. And the other day, Fowler unveiled his list of the top 10 NFL interior offensive linemen, and Peter Skoronski got a shout out in the honorable mention category. Woohoo! One NFL personnel director was quoted as saying this: "Thought he had an uneven start to his career, but he's improved and was playing well down the stretch last season. Arrow pointing up." By the way, Kevin Zeitler, the new right guard, in the also receiving vote section. So good for you. You go, Kevin Zeitler. But the Skoronski thing is interesting to me. So I was reading a story on Pro Football Focus predicting the NFL's most improved player at every position. And lo and behold, at guard, Peter Skoronski. And Pro Football Focus writes this, quote, "Drafted as a tackle, Skoronski played the first 2 seasons of his NFL career at left guard, earning a 61.6 grade in 2023 and a 60.3 grade in 2024, allowing 9 sacks and 60 pressures in 2 seasons. Despite the below-average grade, Skoronski took real steps forward as a pass blocker in the second half of the season, demonstrating the excellent footwork and hand usage that saw him drafted in the top 15. His season-long 76.3 pass blocking grade was 7th at the position, but Skoronski dominated in the final 7 games of the season, allowing just 1 sack and 5 pressures, while earning a league-high 88.2 pass blocking grade." So that lines up with the anonymous NFL personnel director who said arrow pointing up. According to Pro Football Focus, the best pass blocking guard in the NFL over the final 7 games of the season. So things are looking up. There really is no way, Willie, unless Skoronski turns into an annual All-Pro, that he is going to live up to his draft slot as the number 11 overall pick as a guard.
That's a lost cause.
At the number 11 overall pick slot. But I'm wondering what Skoronski can develop into that will leave Titans fans satisfied. If Skoronski, as he apparently demonstrated over the final 7 games of last season, can be one of the best pass blocking guards in the NFL, will Titans fans accept that, still knowing that he was drafted a little too high?
I'm looking at the FTN Football Almanac, which used to be called Football Outsiders, and it is noteworthy. It's got to be especially hard for any analytics site to drill down on an offensive lineman, because as we talked about earlier in the hour, it's really looked upon as a group of 5. And so sometimes it's hard to tell who's responsible for what. But here's how I would put it. Skoronski on this team that is so devoid of foundational players, the direction his career is going is vital. If you are trying to build a roster, which they're so far from being, they got so many things that they need. Like they're staring at a big mountain trying to climb. So what do you have right now? Latham and Skoronski have to be part of this. Skoronski has to get the second contract. FTN Football Almanac. They have Skoronski's grades as the following. He took a step forward as a run blocker, still inconsistent as pass protection. Now, it doesn't talk about first half, second half in the last 7 games. I do remember Brian Callahan saying he thought that Skoronski overall made a nice jump at the end of the season. But FTN is stopping short of saying this guy is becoming a really good guard. They're still coming into question as to whether he will get the 5th-year option, is their evaluation. That's a little ominous for me. We discussed a lot his rookie year getting sort of short-circuited because of the appendectomy he had right in the middle of the season. That was a really tough one to overcome. And then, of course, he's also been hamstrung by the fact that the offensive line around him has been really, less than stellar. So this is a big year for him. If he can make another jump, then I'm confident that he can be a part of the future. They just don't have anybody right now on the team that you're saying is a slam dunk for a second contract. So Latham and Skoronski are vital to get to that point. So I'm encouraged by Skoronski. He's never going to beat the rap of you use the 11th pick on a guard. That's
guard.
Good. And Jared will never let you if you listen to this station.
You
right?
can't just say guard. You have to say guard.
Of course.
Like you're a pirate.
Right.
Guard.
But if he's a good, solid guard for a long time, that's something. And relative to the rest of the roster, he's way ahead of it. He's the least of it. He's not been the guy that's getting crushed every Monday, thanks to Nicholas Petit-Frere. But I do think if they can fix the tackle spot and the line does start to get better, and Skoronski is lagging behind and he doesn't earn that second contract, then you're really going to hear he's really going to be a focal point of criticism, because Rand Carthon, as he leaves, has got very few feathers in his cap. That's one that could go either way, Skoronski, for me.
PFF continues, to your point, Willie. The Titans' commitment to improving the offensive line could help Skoronski's improvement in his 3rd year, too. After all, the offensive line is an ecosystem where chemistry and cohesion matter significantly. The front office added Kevin Zeitler and Dan Moore to the offensive line, and both will be starters in 2025, providing veteran experience. Zeitler's 86.5 grade in 2024 was 3rd among guards. Skoronski looks in prime position to fully break out in 2025, capturing his pass blocking form from the back end of last season and hopefully benefiting from an improved unit.
That would be big. We hit that earlier. If Moore can solidify the left tackle and Latham makes the right tackle position from maybe the biggest weakness in the sport to what you hope. Latham, that's another guy. He's just as important as Skoronski. He's the 7th pick. So he's got to be a pillar, right? He's got to be a guy that you build around, even though it's right tackle. So if you're going right tackle, he needs to be a great right tackle. that will help. Those two things could help Skoronski if there's any semblance of that.
By the way,
But we have to believe it when we see it.
Kevin Zeitler was one of the best pass protecting right guards, according to Next Gen Stats. He had a pressure rate allowed of 5.1%, the fifth lowest among right guards. So you hope that Zeitler does for Latham what Moore can do for Skoronski. So that'll be something to monitor over the course of the season.
And then there's the question of how quickly Cushenberry in the middle
that is a big if
can be out there, and when he does get out there, what does he look like coming off an Achilles injury?
That is a critical point. Michael and Madison on our text line says Joe's gout saga is only rivaled by his sciatica flummox. That is a classic moment on this station. Joey from Bellevue says, "Hey, listening."
We're talking about sciatica.
You don't recall this? This was back in the Ryan Porth days.
Oh, I don't remember this.
When Porth was producing, I believe they were talking about Caleb Farley.
I think so.
And Joe did not recognize the word sciatica.
Oh, I see.
And pronounced it sciatica. David, maybe we can find that coming back from break or something. But yes. And Joey from Bellevue says, "Hey, listening to Robbie and Joe for several years, they are like family." That is true. So we care about how Joe's feeling. He has this rain cloud hovering over him that brings him bad luck between the gout and the deer. There's a lot going on with Joe Rexrode. So I get it. There does seem to be this dark cloud hovering over Joe Rexrode. But that's why we love Joe, because he keeps it optimistic most of the time. But again, if you're looking out there, if you are looking for a sponsorship opportunity, let me act as a salesman. Joe's daily gout update on Robbie and Rexrode is a perfect opportunity for you to sell your business. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. I do want to take a quick hockey break here, because I heard this on Robbie and Rexrode this morning, speaking of Robbie and Rexrode, about a specific player who's rumored to be available, who Robbie thinks could be a good fit for the Predators. And I don't disagree. And we will discuss that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
on Brugler. He actually has him fourth. He has him as a second round grade and number 30 overall. I mean, I think that's got to be largely about the injury. You're talking about a microdiscectomy.
Ugh.
By the way, I didn't even realize this. He also has had a torn ACL in the past and sciatica symptoms from lifting weights that required a different surgery. So 2 surgeries plus an ACL.
What was that last word?
Sciatica. Sciatica, and I may be totally butchering that, symptoms from lifting weights.
You probably
Sciatica?
are.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh, it's sciatica. Oh, my God, I'm an idiot.
Oh man, what a classic moment in the history of Robbie and
A writer!
Rexford.
A writer.
That
Still
is
gets me
true.
every time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh man,
When was this?
that was years ago. I believe they were talking about Caleb Farley. So when was he drafted? 2021.
Yes. So right around that time.
4 years.
2021,
4 years ago by now. Oh man. Oh, Joe. Mike on our text line says the morning gout report brought to you by the Red Meat Council of Middle Tennessee.
Okay.
I don't
Now
know
we're
if there
getting somewhere.
actually is a Red Meat Council of Middle Tennessee, but hey, if you're looking for some sponsorships, the gout segment apparently is very popular at the beginning of the Robbie and Rex Road program. And speaking of the Robbie and Rex Road program, I heard Robbie Stanley talk about this near the end of the program today. There is a young NHL player who is rumored to be available. His name is Mason McTavish. He is a center for the Anaheim Ducks. He's 22 years old. He turns 23 in January. He was the 3rd overall pick of the Anaheim Ducks in the 2021 NHL draft. And Frank Saravalli, formerly of Daily Faceoff, a prominent NHL insider, had this report on McTavish the other day.
Any talk of Mason McTavish getting moved? He's one name to watch for me, I think, moving forward. I think it's been a tough go for McTavish in Anaheim. I view McTavish just from I don't know if mental standpoint, but body language standpoint is the right way to say it. I view him as sort of a bit of a depressed asset in the sense that I think a really solid player that has been beaten down by a lot of losses in Anaheim, that I view him as similar to Trevor Zegras. I think a change of scenery would be good for him. I think there's a lot of teams that are interested. I think some teams have tried to work on what an offer sheet might look like for Mason McTavish, as it seems like that's one of those situations that's going to be a struggle, much in the same way that getting that Zegras contract was for Anaheim. But no one can really put together something on paper that they think is going to dissuade Anaheim from turning down or not matching that offer sheet. Just because the Ducks have so much cap space, it's really hard to offer sheet a team that has a ton of space. So keep an eye on Mason McTavish, though. I think he's going to be an interesting name to watch.
So that was Frank Saravalli talking about Mason McTavish. And Willie, we were just talking about this during the break. Barry Trotz will be the first to tell you that the Predators' center depth this upcoming season, it's bleak. The way I see it right now, you have Ryan O'Reilly as your number 1 center, followed by Fedor Svechkov, followed by Eric Haula, followed by Michael McCarron. Now, Willie, you were out this day, but as we were discussing, Derek and I, that is, as we were discussing the post-free agency lineup for the Predators, I would have a hard time finding a center lineup on paper in the NHL that may be worse than the Predators based on the one I just read. And we could have that argument at a different time. But
No, I think I agree.
okay,
And for this reason, Colton Sissons, we know, was like the old security blanket.
yes.
He wasn't going to light up the score sheet every night, but he was a good, solid pro that could fill a role at your 2, 3, or 4 center, and obviously could play some wing. But without him, just the number of physical guys on the roster that can play center are limited. I don't think they got Eric Haula to be an everyday center. I think he is more in the role of a Sissons who could play center or wing. So right now, their depth chart would assume that Svechkov is an every night player in the league. And I think he's ready for that, but I'm not sure. Michael McCarron's in the last year of his contract. You don't want to play Steven Stamkos at center. Barry Trotz has said that on the record. So to make the decision to trade Sissons would tell you that of all of the things that they're going to try to accomplish between now and the start of the season, picking up another center in some form has got to be on the list. Would you agree? Just the way the roster is constructed. It's no NHL team would go into a year with that little depth at center, assuming that guys like David Edstrom, Brady Martin are not ready to help you yet. Now, Martin, could they give him a look for the first few games of the year, buy some time? Yeah, that's plausible, but that's still a lot to ask. If your true goal is to see if you can bounce back, they need another center. Now, whether that's McTavish or Jack Roslovic, who's still out there, somebody like that, there's different ways they could go. But now that's the backdrop to me of the McTavish story.
So Shayna Goldman of The Athletic had a story the other day looking at McTavish as an offer sheet candidate. Now, if the Predators wanted to offer sheet McTavish and give him a cap hit of roughly $7 million, it would cost them a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick in 2026.
Into all those in 2026?
According to this screenshot, which I assume is from Puckpedia, it would be a 2026 first-round pick, a 2026 second-round pick, and a 2026 third-round pick to offer sheet Mason McTavish with a cap hit of at least roughly $7 million. Now, McTavish has been in the NHL now for parts of 4 seasons, 3 full seasons. He is coming off of a career-high 52-point season, 22 goals, 30 assists in 76 games with the Anaheim Ducks. But Shayna Goldman makes an interesting point in this article, Willie, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, about the types of players I would like the Predators to take a shot on. She mentions Dylan Strome. Remember, Dylan Strome played for the Chicago Blackhawks. He was a restricted free agent, just like Mason McTavish. The Chicago Blackhawks did not give him a qualifying offer. He became an unrestricted free agent. The Capitals bought low, signed him to a cheap deal. Last season, he was their number 1 center, and I believe averaged a point per game. I believe he had 82 points in 82 games.
So they got a bargain.
Yes.
That has turned into a great asset, and that is a terrible decision that has haunted the Blackhawks. This is something completely different. This is a major investment.
Yes.
That you would have to do just to get McTavish.
I think Goldman's point was that any team rolling the dice on McTavish hopes that you have a Dylan Strome type return on investment.
Right.
A late bloomer who needs the right opportunity.
Right. But I think she leaves out the size of the investment, the gap between what they did when they got Strome as opposed to what it's going to take to get McTavish. It's apples and oranges. Now, how often have we discussed the Predators' need for players who are developed and in the range of those at the low to mid 20s that you could keep for a while? So this guy fits the bill, and he's a center. He was the 3rd overall pick. So there's a couple of things, though, that come to mind. A, I can't give up my first-round pick for next year's draft if I'm Barry Trotz. No way. You agree? If the draft is what it's supposed to be next year, which is loaded, I need my first-round pick. Mason McTavish is not, to me, worth it to give up a first-round pick. I don't think. Because here's my question. The Ducks, why do they want to get rid of Mason McTavish? They have cap space.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it.
What did they not see with him?
Well,
why? I mean,
they just sold low on Trevor Zegras, but they had been trying to move on from Zegras, I think, for a while.
Right. But I think he's a little further down the road.
Yes.
Zegras is a little older.
Yes.
His flaws. This guy's 22 and he's got a reasonable amount of production. Why wouldn't you want him to be the foundational guy? What's the holdup? They've got cap space. What?
Well, Saravalli in his report said that maybe McTavish has been beaten down by all of the losing that's been going on in Anaheim. I don't know if you watched the Predators this past season or not, but
right. Well, but and that does happen to young players. And now the other thing, you sign him to a offer sheet of $7 million.
Yes.
Why would the Ducks not just match that game over.
Right.
It's over. Like they're not gonna let him go for that.
So
right?
Caleb on our text line says we would have to give all of that up to acquire him. Is that how an offer sheet works? Yes. So if the Predators put together an offer sheet, and let's say it's a 3-year deal with a cap hit of $7.1 million, there are certain thresholds based on the annual average value that if the team that you are offer sheeting chooses not to match, you have to give up that draft pick compensation. So if the Predators gave Mason McTavish a contract with a roughly $7 million cap hit, at least, if the Ducks said, nah, we're not interested, you can have him. The Predators would have to give up a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick next year. So yes, Caleb, that's how it works.
And in a normal situation, I don't think I would worry about that. That would be okay. But the first round pick in next year's draft, knowing that the Predators are teetering, and that pick could be a top 10 pick next year if the season goes south, which it could. Is Mason McTavish that good and that much of a foundational piece that the Ducks don't think so? If they're willing to let him go for a first, second, and third, they obviously don't think he's that good. They're not loaded. They have Leo Carlson, who is a special player, it looks like. So they have him. Do they not want Mason McTavish to be their number 2 center behind him for the long haul? And if so, why not? And if they don't, then is it worth giving up what could be a top 10 pick next year? It's a tough dilemma because there is a big, giant hole at center for the Predators, as we know.
615-737-1025, by the way, according to our fearless leader, Chase McCabe, Trey Wallace, the national college sports reporter for Outkick and Fox, will join us live from SEC Media Days in Atlanta at around 11:20. So looking forward to talking to Trey Wallace live from SEC Media Days in Atlanta, 615-737-1025. But before we get to Trey Wallace, some interesting comments about NIL from 2 completely different people. But I heard one, then I heard the other. I found it to be interesting. I want to play them both for you coming up next. 6 D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan here with you. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So, SEC Media Days roll on. Our coverage of SEC Media Days is sponsored by Brewhouse South. Experience Nashville's ultimate sports and brew hangout at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs. And I heard some interesting interviews yesterday, Willie, one of which did not occur at SEC Media Days. We did this fun little exercise last week talking about which college athletes would have benefited from NIL had NIL been in effect 25 years ago. And one of the players we all agreed on was Johnny Manziel. And Johnny Manziel himself said in an interview with Greg McElroy, who, by the way, is apparently the main character of SEC Media Days because of that Nick Saban rumor, he said that he would have taken a pay cut had he gone to the NFL based on what he thinks he could have earned at NIL at Texas A&M. But Greg McElroy asked Johnny Manziel in this interview an interesting question about NIL and the pressure that comes with being paid in college. Here is what Manziel said to Greg McElroy.
Look, as an SEC quarterback in a small town with a big university, huge brand behind you, there's enormous pressure. And some guys rise to it like you did, and some guys struggle with it. But I feel like it's heightened now in the NIL era. Do you feel like the guys are actually feeling more pressure now because of the money, or is it less pressure because they've already made so much that maybe they're kind of playing with house money, so to speak?
I would think it would probably be, I mean, it's still a lot of pressure, right? To be a starter of an SEC school, any of them throughout the entire conference. There's a huge fan base and huge, school pride that goes into it. So, I mean, I think you have pressure in going out and having to, play well and play at a high level every single week. I think the NIL side of it really does give you, a cushion. You can be a 4-year starter now in the NIL world and set yourself up really, really nice, whether you go up to the next level or not. This is money that before somebody goes into the real world to do whatever they do, this is an unbelievable cushion. So as far as, from a financial standpoint, it takes a lot of the pressure off the guys, rather than playing 4 years and coming out of there with maybe a couple grand in your bank account. You're sitting there with commas now. So, I think the pressure to perform on a Saturday as an SEC starter will always be high and it'll always be there. But from an NIL standpoint, if you get named the starter, you're making pretty good money regardless. So it should take a little bit of pressure off that financial side.
So that was Johnny Manziel to Greg McElroy. Willie, before I play the next clip, what were your thoughts on Manziel's answer there?
But Manziel is a little bit of his a unique character.
Yes.
So it doesn't surprise me that that's the way he thinks. I think what we're going to find is it's probably going to be different for different people, but I think it has to be hard for a player who didn't play in that era to actually know how he would feel in that. He was famously suspended, or he was getting money, like he was working the system to get. It's pretty well documented, to get some cash. So money was in his DNA. He wasn't there just to grab the scholarship and let's go win. Like, he was looking to make money,
yes,
off of his name if he could. So he might have been able to do all that and still play great, which he did at the college level anyway. I think it would be different for other players. And that I think brings us to the other perspective.
Yes. So keep in mind what you just heard from Johnny Manziel. Here was Georgia coach Kirby Smart yesterday at SEC Media Days, sort of talking about the same thing.
I was part of a 9-year program and a 9-year run that was one of the greatest ever in college football. Okay. And now I'm at a place that's doing it right and competing in a really high level. I've seen what it looks like to have fire, passion, and energy. And I've seen guys that were really hungry. And I go back to a Dante Hightower, Rolando McClain, a Julio Jones, a Trent Richardson, a Mark Ingram, all the way to Roquan Smith, to Nolan Smith, to Jordan Davis, to George Pickens, to Jake Fromm, to guys that played in our program, DeAndre Swift. You know what they had? They had a love for the game and fire, passion, and energy. That's not the same as it used to be. You can say what you want, but there's people more in college football today, especially in the SEC, that are comfortable with where they are. This is a pretty good life. I'm earning $200K a year. I'm very comfortable. And you don't reach your goals being comfortable. You don't attain great success. None of those people I mentioned before were ever comfortable. They were aiming at something. They had a goal. They wanted to go achieve it. What you see now is like, where's the drive and energy and enthusiasm? Well, we want people that have it. We're going to seek it. We're going to try to go find it. And if we can just do that 1% better than everybody else, gives us an opportunity to be ahead.
So that was Kirby Smart sort of addressing the same thing. So you hear what Manziel said. You hear what Smart said. What do you think about those two viewpoints?
I think Kirby Smart has a good point. For some players, they are going to be complacent. They are going to get comfortable, and it's going to be the most money they ever make, maybe in their lives, by the time they're 22 and they're done playing. And if they get too comfortable and they don't have the inner drive, whether it's football or anything else, you're set up for some hard times, especially if you're not paying any attention to the fact that you have a chance to go to class. Maybe you have a chance to go to class. I don't know if they even let you go to class anymore with all the time you spend weight training and getting ready to play football. But that's a whole nother point. I still think it's going to take another 5 to 10 years to really see the full effect of the development part of a person who gets NIL. I think for some, they'll be able to be in both lanes. They'll be able to take advantage of the opportunity to make money, but also still have the drive that Kirby Smart is looking for. Well, he better hope that his team has the drive, because his team's paying out a lot of money to his players. But you asked, I think the question to Manziel was for the quarterback specifically. And what you would have is this, what you will have, especially if there's more transparency, which is there's supposed to be, right? This new era of NIL, this new chapter, is there's supposed to be a clearinghouse where everybody's supposed to report what everybody's making, right? And people are very skeptical of how accurate that's going to be, because people are going to want to supplement, augment behind the scenes what's not on the clearinghouse. But if somebody can go on and say, Johnny Manziel makes $2 million a year to be the Texas A&M quarterback, that could be used against a quarterback who doesn't live up to the expectations, right? If that guy has a bad year, it will naturally be, we're paying this guy $2 million a year. He's terrible. We got to get him out of there. We got to get another guy, especially at a place that fires money around like they do in a lot of places in the SEC. Fair?
Yes.
And that pressure definitely can get to some quarterbacks. They'll have the $2 million, which isn't all bad. But what does it do to your play on the field? It could affect your play on the field.
I was waiting for somebody to say this. Michael and Madison says, I think too much drive is actually the issue when it comes to Georgia. I'm glad somebody else made that joke. I remember Derek coming in here last week and talking about how he was listening to a show on ESPN talking about college football. And he said, had you just switched out the names with NFL players, it would have been the same conversation. We are talking about college players a little bit differently now, I feel like, because they do get paid for their services. So just as we do with professional sports, Jeffrey Simmons, one of the highest paid players at his position in the NFL, he's not living up to his contract. He's not worth that amount of money. The contract is one of the easiest things to latch onto when a player isn't playing well. That's the first thing you point to. He is not living up to the money we paid. As Jared used to say, pay what you owe.
And right now, to this point, we've had NIL for a few years, but we don't really know what each individual guy is making, right? We have sometimes it's reported.
If I recall correctly,
don't know if it's true.
Carson Beck, who used to be at Georgia and is now at Miami, following in Cam Ward's footsteps, I believe he's making $4 million-ish.
I think that's right, which was part of what Nico's argument was, right?
Right.
The Iamale drama.
The Iamale drama. I mean, think about what that's going to be like at UCLA with Iamale Ava. Duke's quarterback, who came from Tulane, Mensa. I think he's making roughly the same amount of money as Carson Beck.
If there is a position where you have a general sense of what the going rate is and what a guy might make, it's quarterback.
Yes.
And it's probably only going to get more transparent if this has any effect, if there is a clearinghouse where you can actually look it up. So what will that do? It's a good question. It's how you're wired. For some guys, I think it would be the Johnny Manziel. They'll see an opportunity, but Johnny Manziel is a unique. He doesn't represent the vast majority of these quarterbacks. There's going to be a lot of quarterbacks that this is the most they're ever going to make playing football. They're not going to go to the NFL.
He signed a 4-year, Manziel did, a 4-year, $8.2 million rookie contract with the Cleveland Browns. And he said,
he was a first-round pick.
Right. A late first-round pick.
Yeah.
But he said, I took a pay cut by going to the NFL based on what I think I could have made in college.
Oh, sure. He might have been one of those guys that stayed another year just to exploit. Did he go to the draft early?
I think
he had eligibility left because you redshirted for a year, right? He didn't play 4 straight years.
Let's take a look. Johnny Manziel played 2 seasons at Texas A&M.
And a red shirt where he didn't do it. So he was there 3. So he could have come back. That would have been an interesting thing. Would he have done what Bo Nix did and some of these other quarterbacks? Stay an extra year, try to up your stock and cash in on what a quarterback at a high paying place can make. It's interesting. Texas A&M and Johnny Manziel mentioned this young man. Texas A&M's quarterback this year looks like it's going to be Marcel Reed.
Yes.
Who is from Nashville, played at MBA, had different choices. I think committed to Ole Miss and then switched to Texas A&M. He's bided his time as Texas A&M has probably had, I don't know how much money invested in quarterbacks. We know they spend on the high end.
Yes.
And they're desperate to win. What kind of pressure he'll be under? I don't know exactly what he's being paid, but I do know as a recruit, before he ever stepped on the field, he was promised a pretty substantial amount of money. He was that kind of recruit. And he still wasn't a slam dunk, hey, let's get him in there right away.
But as the lines continue to be blurred between collegiate sports and professional sports, the aspect of the quote-unquote contract is going to follow. And if Carson Beck goes to Miami and stinks, you know that there are going to be people saying, we paid $4 million for this guy?
Especially a guy that you already know.
Right.
It'd be one thing to get a guy that nobody's heard of, like, the young man at Tennessee, Aguilar. He's an unknown. So, you at least have to, you can't say, well, we're paying this guy or whatever. There's going to be a little bit of a different expectation for him as a wild card, as opposed to Miami, where Carson Beck is going to be looked upon to be the savior. He's also coming off a pretty serious injury.
I'm looking at Kirby Smart said something else yesterday about all of this that was within that same news conference. From Front Office Sports, Georgia recently closed its official NIL collective and instead hired Learfield to help facilitate NIL deals. The school will pay athletes the full $20.5 million allowed in revenue sharing. They're going to get paid. No coaches are going to stand up here and say they don't want players to get paid. We want them to get paid. I am completely comfortable with that. What I want is them to get paid and that not change how they go about their business. That not change if they're sensitive to being demanded excellence of. And therein lies the issue. What's the term people often use? Being fat and happy. Well,
yeah. Well, somebody who pays all this money out is going to win a national championship. And so it's all sort of settle. So I think part of what you're looking for with recruits is, who's wired that will have the drive and because I do think there will be plenty of athletes that crash and burn chasing the money and getting complacent when they get a lot of money. Blowing all the money is going to happen a lot. It's what we do in college. I just didn't have that money to blow. What money I had, I blew it.
On what?
Whatever. movies. I didn't have that much money, but you go out, you're not aware of.
All I remember
You're
is
not worried about your budget. You're not looking to save money. You're just trying to spend it. But it would be so different if we were making significant money. You almost need like a financial planner on the team. Teams hire GMs.
Yes.
So why not have a financial planner on the team? You
I-
probably should, right? A banker?
I just
You
remember
should have a bank at your school.
my you could add funds to your student ID card and you would
Yeah.
just swipe it everywhere and eventually it would be like card declined. Mom,
Right.
can you add $20 to my student card?
I remember
So-
the first time my little debit card that I had, I've had a debit card for the first time, and I gave it to, I think we were at Chili's across the street on West End.
That
Bill
Chili's
comes
is
back,
still going strong.
Your card, sir, didn't work. I'm looking around going, what? How could that be? I had $70 in here.
Or so you
I thought I
thought.
had $70 in there.
Yes. 615-737-1025. We will be joined by Trey Wallace of Outkick, their national college sports reporter. He is live in Atlanta at SEC Media Days. He will join us coming up next, 615-737-1025. This isn't just a concert, it's a cause. Trine-Tix's Rock the Cradle helps give fragile newborns a stronger start and keeps moms close when it matters most. With Tim McGraw live on stage and your support behind every beat, Ascension St. Thomas is turning music into healing. Tickets are on sale now at rockthecradlenashville.org. D. Mace, Vinkin, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game. Chase and Big Joe are live at SEC Media Days in Atlanta. A reminder that they will be joined by SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey today at 12:45 on the program. Our coverage from SEC Media Days is sponsored by Brewhouse South. Experience Nashville's ultimate sports and brew hangout at Brewhouse South and Cool Springs. Let's go to SEC Media Days in Atlanta, where we are joined by Trey Wallace, the national college sports reporter for Outkick and Fox. Trey, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm good. I'm good. We are, we got the afternoon here left, and then one more day tomorrow, and we're getting closer to football season. Thank goodness.
So, yes, of course. So today is Alabama Day, among
Yep.
other days at SEC Media Days. And I need your help to give me a good read on the Crimson Tide this coming season. Kalen DeBoer said that Alabama fell way short of expectations last season. It was the first time that the Crimson Tide failed to win at least 10 games since Nick Saban's first season nearly 20 years ago. They had their opportunities to make the college football playoff, but losing to Vanderbilt, which we all loved around here, certainly did not help Alabama's cause. So what should we expect from Alabama this coming season?
Yeah, I think last year they were really trying to find their identity of what they were without Saban. I mean, and look, that was the conversation last year. What is Kalen DeBoer going to look like? Him coming from Washington to Alabama. Is this something that was going to work? Jalen Milroe at quarterback with an offense that I didn't really think kind of fit Jalen Milroe. I think now, and that's nothing against Milroe because I think he would have flourished in other offenses. But now you take a look at it, and Kalen DeBoer talked about it. Ty Simpson would be the starting quarterback if they were to, start the season today. I think he's going to be the guy either way once we get out of fall camp. Look, Alabama, in my opinion, got themselves a good offensive line this year. Caden Proctor's here down here in Atlanta. I think he's going to be the glue to that line of scrimmage. They're going to be reestablished in the running game. They're going to try to get it down the field. Like to me, like the defense is going to be fine for Alabama. I know what some teams did to them last year, but at the same time, it's like that Oklahoma game where they go out to Norman and they get beat. Well, you know what? The offense didn't show up. So you look at the situation now. It's also too, we don't know what to expect from Ty Simpson. Even though we think he's going to be good, it's the same thing with and I'm not trying to compare Arch with Ty, so please don't say that. But I am saying we still don't know what we're going to get out of Arch yet. He's played in 2 games. So I look at what Alabama has, even with Austin Mack quarterback. They could go different directions. But to me, this is going to be a team that I think the first weekend of November is fighting for a playoff spot. And whether that be, they're the 13th ranked team in the country, or the 11th or 10th or 9th. I do think that they kind of get back in that conversation. But at the end of the day, when it comes to national championships, I still think they're a year or 2 away from winning that. I think there's a couple teams in the SEC that are ahead of them. But as you can tell with their recruiting lately, they're starting to put things back together. So, again, it probably didn't help that the Nick Saban nonsense from earlier the week kind of came out, and then Kalen gets here on Wednesday. But overall, heading into next year, I do think that they have an opportunity to be a playoff team and potentially compete for a national championship. They just got to make sure they fix a few things on offense.
Let's move on to another team being represented today at SEC Media Days, the Florida Gators.
Yep.
And DJ Lagway, a lot of interest in him at quarterback. Where would you put him if you are ranking SEC quarterbacks? Where would you put Lagway? And how bright do you think the future is in Gainesville with him under center?
Man, he's the savior of Billy Napier from last year. I mean, what? Halfway through the season, we're talking about who's going to be the next head coach at Florida. I love DJ Lagway. I think he's going to be really good this year. I think he's got enough wide receivers that are going to make him even better this year. Now, does that mean Florida's going to fight for a playoff spot? No, not in my opinion. But at the same time, go out and win 8-9 games next year and have Billy Napier find success on offense with DJ Lagway, who's shown he can be a really good player. Now, I know he went in and got some shoulder surgery done this offseason that, according to people I talked with, kind of put it off for a little bit. But now, hopefully I think he's going to be full go and ready for the opening game of the year. But to me, I think Florida has the ability to put all the Billy Napier nonsense to the side. But I'll say this, we could still be having a conversation about Napier and is he the right fit for Florida, 5-6 games into the 2025 season, just because how the schedule lines up. And so to me, I think they take a step forward from where they were last year. And we all saw how they ended that thing, but a lot of it's going to rely on the arm of DJ Lagway. And I think that, he's the guy that Billy Napier has entrusted to lead this offense, be that guy on the field for them, be that captain. And I do. At the end of the day, I think we're going to look back to last season and be like, God, man, okay, like Billy Napier's here to stick around. Thank goodness for Florida's case, they decided not to get rid of him or decided to go in some weird direction because of fan outrage. But it is going to be a fascinating tale to watch the Gators this year, especially if they don't shore up the defense. So excited to see what DJ can do, though.
Trey Wallace is with us from Outkick. We're talking SEC. He is over at SEC Media Days. Trey, I think Joey Aguilar is going to be one of the more unique case studies, I think, as we move forward in this era of college football and the NIL. He's a little bit of a mystery. We know what he did at Appalachian State. It sounded like they tried to temper expectations and say the quarterback job is open. But what did you learn about him, if anything, yesterday?
Well, I think it goes back to more about what I've learned over the last 5 weeks with Joey Aguilar. He jumped head first into this thing. Every single meeting that he can, holding extra throwing sessions with the receivers when he can, at team meetings that don't even involve the quarterbacks, popping on the defensive side. So what I'm getting at is he's trying to turn himself into a leader at Tennessee. But also at the same time, you can't forget, you got Merklinger around. And this is going to be an open competition. But I think at the end of the day, look, I've watched Joey Aguilar play a lot of college football, mainly because he was in the same conference as my South Alabama Jaguars. So I did get to see a lot of him at App State. And, he went out to UCLA to be the starting quarterback. Now we know how things went and where they went haywire. But I think coming into Tennessee, I think that opportunity is there for him to kind of shut down the nonsense that everything happened during the spring. Now, we all know how it's going to be. Tennessee goes out and loses a football game early on in the season in the first month, and they barely score 15, 16, whatever, how many points. They're going to be like, should they have paid Nico to stay at Tennessee? But I think Joey Aguilar, I'm not saying he's going to be like that guy, that's conversation one of the top quarterbacks in the country. But I do think he can do enough and Tennessee does have some receivers that will be able to help him downfield. And I think you're going to see them open it up a little bit more than you've seen in years past. Even with Nico as a quarterback. I mean, you look at the offense last year. I mean, it was a lot of 15-yard slants. I didn't see a lot down the field. I mean, I'm sure there was a couple of games, but I do think that Joey Aguilar gives him that presence. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to be the starting quarterback for Tennessee, and then we see where things go from there. This squad, it's interesting to me. As much as they were pass heavy with Hendon Hooker and whatnot, and kind of tried to be with Joe Milton, they've really turned that running game into something that Josh Heupel can rely on. So, to me, it's going to be the fascinating part is can the running game help offset any kind of the passing game problem? So, but Josh, look, behind the scenes, the staff is excited about Aguilar. But just as much as they'd be excited for Merklinger right now, and you're going to have to go out there and prove it. But I do think that Joey has a leg up, even from an experience standpoint. He's got that over Merklinger.
I think we would all agree that last year, Diego Pavia was a sort of a sneak attack. It was an ambush. Nobody knew anything about him. And the next thing you know, they've got especially some early wins. And when he was healthy, he had an amazing season. We know. I'm curious about, especially from where you sit, Trey, you saw him go through. He's got that great persona. Vanderbilt has no choice but to double down on that, right? Even though Vanderbilt historically, and I think Clark Lee would be wired this way. I'm a Vanderbilt guy. I've seen it. You can't hype yourself up too much. It's risky to do that. Yeah. But Diego Pavia, he's got to be himself, and Clark Lee wants him to be himself. But I'm curious, when there's not that element of surprise, what they have in store this year to try to duplicate what they did last year.
They have got nothing to lose when it comes to propping themselves up, saying whatever needs to be said. Diego's going to be Diego. And thankfully, he kind of came on my radar when New Mexico State went into Auburn a few years ago and won that game. You're like, wait a minute, who's that kid? And then he ends up at Vanderbilt. I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be interesting. Like, we've seen how he can play. The surprise factor, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks like Diego. To me, he's got, man, such toughness to him that stands out to me more than maybe some other running quarterbacks. I think look, if you're Vanderbilt, you have to embrace all of this. I mean, Diego's out here talking about national championships. God bless him. Like, if he feels that way, let him feel that way. Like, it's funny, you put something out on social media, Diego's comments, and everybody wants to attack. Oh, that guy's an idiot. He's crazy. Why is he an idiot for thinking and believing that his team can fight for a national championship or an SEC championship? I mean, and especially a lot of it's been Tennessee fans. It's like, well, excuse me, wait a minute, Tennessee, okay, you made the playoff last year. That's fine, but you got humiliated. I think that right now there's a lot of envy of the folks at Vanderbilt. I honestly think that Diego Pavia is a lightning rod that the Commodores need. They're going to be able to help them. And I think that at the same time, the promotion that he gives the school, I mean, think about it. Outside of, I don't even know, outside of the Nick Saban rumor, story, whatever you want to call that on Monday, I mean, and Arch Manning yesterday, which Arch was going to take the headlines, by the way, there hasn't been a more talked about person at SEC Media Days than Diego Pavia, and he went on the first day. I just think that Vanderbilt right now, just take all of this and enjoy it, and go out there and make sure that you win the games that you're supposed to win. Then at the same time, surprise a couple of folks. I think I don't know. A lot of people run these types of offenses and whatnot, but, people did have problems trying to stop Diego last year. Even the Texas game that I was at. I mean, Texas had a hard time stopping him. I know what the final score was. So what I'm saying is, if I'm Vanderbilt, you got nothing to lose here. Go all in. Have fun with it. Promote the heck out of it. If you want to start a Heisman campaign for him after week 1, do whatever you got to do. This is free promotion. And Diego is worth every penny that they are spending on this. And I think at the end of the day, Clark Lea has got himself a squad that is going to surprise a lot of folks this season.
Trey Wallace of Outkick joining us on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick. Trey, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of SEC Media Days.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You as well. Trey Wallace on the program. Willie, how does that sound to you? People envious of Vanderbilt.
Well, this is the danger. I think this is where you really find out how good you are, because I don't, Trey, one of his last things that he said there was they might surprise some people. I don't know what it would take to surprise this year. It would be do more than you did last year, or for some people maybe surprise would be to duplicate what you did last year. When you consider how tough the schedule is, who you have to beat, he said you got to win the games you're supposed to win. Well, how many games will Vanderbilt be the favorite on their schedule? 3, 4? Even though I think on paper their roster looks a lot better, they return production. As you heard Clark Lea say, that was one of his themes in the many interviews that he did. They return more production than they have since he's been there. That being said, I still don't think they're going to walk in and be favored in a lot of their games. So they will have to continue to overachieve just to be as good as they will last year. And they're not going to sneak up on anybody. Nobody's going to take them as lightly as they were taken last year.
615-737-1025. I'm glad that we're on this topic, because during the break, I want Willie to transform into Coach Willie for a second, because there were some things that Clark Lea and Diego Pavia said that got a lot of run at SEC Media Day. So I want Willie to transform over the next few minutes into Coach Willie. And I have some questions for him coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
Let's talk loan pronto. If you are looking to get out of a big car loan with a high interest rate that's chewing you up every month, maybe a credit card or two that's out of control in that same way where you can't get that principal down, you're paying the interest, but you're spinning your wheels. If you're a homeowner, a great option for you is the Rapid Equity Loan Program at Loan Pronto. They can get you approved in under 24 hours. They can get you thousands of dollars of cash out of your home's equity with a better interest rate, and bang, you pay off that car. You pay off the credit card bill, and it's going to put you in a better monthly position. You can cut your monthly expenses by $1,800. On the average, it's right around there. They can get you there depending on your unique situation. They can get you instantly approved with low rates and no hard credit pull up front. So call Loan Pronto. They're A+ rated by the BBB, have nearly 2,500 5-star Google reviews. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Get that debt relief now. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
This is our reality. As we strengthen, so too does our league. There is no easy path. So we can't just copy and paste our process from a year ago and expect to advance. To copy and paste is to remain the same. To remain the same is to abandon the mission, and our mission is winning. For us, this means embracing a process of continuous improvement that leads to us winning every game on our schedule. We believe we have what it takes to play into January, but we have to support our belief with a disciplined focus in the present. The burden of our goals is the pressure of knowing we can't afford to have an off night. We can't afford to have a lackluster effort or an unfocused snap. All this takes a mature team, and it takes a team devoted to winning.
That was Clark Lea on Monday at SEC Media Days. And when I heard that one specific line, Willie, we feel we have what it takes to play into January, I said, I wonder what Coach Willie thinks about this. And then I saw a lot of tweets about Diego Pavia. He did a lot of appearances at SEC Media Days, and he said, everywhere, I came back because I want to win the national championship. And I did see some reaction to Clark Lea's comment about playing into January from some smartasses who said, well, the Duke's Mayo Bowl is in January, so I guess he can't play into January, or the Liberty Bowl. But for those of you who have known Willie Donning for a long time, there's Willie, and then there's Coach Willie. And Coach Willie doesn't like to get ahead of himself. So I appreciate Clark Lea's and Diego Pavia's confidence. But when you hear those things from your alma mater, how do you feel, Coach Willie?
I think if you listen to the context of everything that Clark Lea said, and I can't speak for Diego. Diego is a different guy.
Yes.
Diego, and this is one big thing that Clark Lea discussed a lot. And I remember Mac Brown actually saying these same types of things about Vince Young way back in the day. You have to let your quarterback's personality come out. You got to let him be himself, even if you're not wired that way. And so that's what Clark Lea basically has done. He is letting Diego Pavia be himself. Now, there are discussions that they have, and he's talked about that, of, make sure what you're doing matches up the goal of the group is really the only guideline he gives him, right? But he's giving him space to put his personality out there. And our discussion earlier this week when he was out there was, does he have that same drive? Now that he's probably making a lot more money, he's got the attention of everybody. Does he still have that chip on the shoulder and underdog mentality that I'm going to show you that I can elevate people? As long as he's got that, I think you'll take what you get from rolling him out there. He's the guy. For Clark Lea, I think if you heard his comments, I didn't take it as he thinks they're going to be in the playoffs or anything like that. I take it as they know as the underdog, and nobody knows it better than Clark. Remember Clark's background. Grew up in Nashville. Underdog from the start. Was a college baseball player before he was a college football player. Walked on and earned a job for an underdog Vanderbilt team. So he knows how tough it is. He knows that if Vanderbilt walks out there and isn't sharp, they can lose to anybody. Pick out whoever you think is the worst team on the schedule. Opening day. Remember the very first game that Clark Lea's Vanderbilt team played? They got smoked by East Tennessee State, I think. I'm trying to forget it. I'm trying to forget that game happened. I was at the game. They got smoked.
Which year
by
was
East
that?
Tennessee State. 4 years ago was his first game.
Let's take a look. Yes, they lost 23-3.
23-3. Scored
State.
3 against East Tennessee State. So
Who just
nobody
got their
knows
program
better than Clark Lea that if Vanderbilt is not ready to play, anybody can beat you. Now, their talent level is a lot better than it was that back then. So it's not as true as it was, but it's still the principle you have to go by. And so I think what he's desperately trying to drive into his team is, hey, last year was really good. But if you think you just kind of roll the ball out there again and be complacent, you're going to learn a lesson the hard way. And I still have this theory as Coach Willie. Do they beat Alabama if they had beaten Georgia State the week before? If they had escaped and won that game, which they almost did. They struggled the whole game in Atlanta and still were basically one play away from a pretty miraculous comeback where they walk out of there going, we got it done. It wasn't, we played terrible, but we got it done. Did they have to lose that game to come out and be as sharp as they were? And maybe Alabama saw the score against Georgia State and said, they lost to Georgia State. We got an easy one coming here in Nashville. We're going to have fun. All of our fans are going to come in. We're going to have a great time in Nashville and roll out of there with an easy win. So if that lesson was driven home after the Georgia State game, then I think they have a chance to do what they did last year. And how did they do it? They slow the tempo down. They lower the amount of possessions. They give ground on defense. They make you earn the points, and then they grind on offense. He talked about they need to add to that. More explosive plays, more turnovers, etc. But they have a formula that worked, but only if they have tremendous execution every week. They have to overachieve more so than many of the other teams in the league. Virtually any team that they're going to play in the SEC. Was that Coach Willie enough for you?
That was very.
That
Coach
was
Willie.
my Coach Willie channeled right
Yes.
there. But did you hear? Like I think if you took a snippet and just put it in an article, you know better than most as a writer. You could take a snippet of Clark Lea's statement we just played.
Well, that's what
I think we
happened.
can play until January, and you're like, whoa, what is he doing?
That's what I saw. I saw that one line tweeted
Right.
out, and a lot of, again, as I said, smart ass would say, well, the Duke's Mayo Bowl is in January.
But forget
this
about
year.
that. Let's not even worry about that.
I know.
You could take that and hyperbole and say they think they're going to make the playoffs.
Well, that's why I wanted to hear it and not just read it.
Right, but Clark, you can't escape that. And even if you're Clark Lee and you're measured and you give all the detail, and I mean, what we played was 1%
Yes.
of a very long discussion,
Yes.
philosophical discussion that he had on the podium there.
He is an engaging orator.
Yeah, and he will answer the question, and he's got the Barry Trotz. So let me just give you details A, B, C, and D to go with my answer. But in the world of the tweet and the snippet, when you get it sounds like he's Diego Pavia. I think we can play into January, and that's not. Remember, you may not remember this, but Derek Mason, the coach, his first year after he replaced James Franklin, who had bowl game, 9-win bowl game, 9-win bowl game. Those are his 3 seasons. 6 wins. They went 6 and 7, 9 and then 9. He came in, and I think a lot of people were saying, Vanderbilt's roster doesn't look quite as good. Even if James Franklin had stayed, I think they were going to have a dip. We'll never know. It's a what if of how the program would have gone if Franklin would have stayed 2 or 3 more years. But Derek Mason came in, and he did go Diego Pavia. We want to win the East. If you can't say it, you can't be it. Or, he had some quotes, and they made the big headlines. And then they were awful his first year. Clark Lee it's not what he intended to do, but that one quote can be taken the wrong way.
Yes.
I would say.
Yes.
Out of context.
Absolutely. Okay. You may now recede from Coach Willie.
Okay. The Coach Willie hat is off.
It is fun to react to games when Willie is invested because he does not text. He does not reply to text.
Right. You got no text during that Alabama game.
No.
Hey, they're winning.
No.
Hey, they got this.
No. I understand it. I'm the same way. By the way, Predators fans, in roughly 8 minutes, you will have the entire Predators schedule at your disposal. The NHL is releasing full schedules at noon. The Predators home opener was announced earlier today. The Predators will open at home, and I also think open the season. We'll find out in a few minutes. Against the Columbus Blue Jackets, October 9th, 7 o'clock at Bridgestone Arena. So blink, and soon we might be back at Bridgestone Arena at Barrel House doing the show from Predators opening night, October 9th against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So again, NHL schedule is released. Then we'll be able to find out when Willie's not going to be here for a few months.
I'm always here in spirit.
Well, you usually are on remotely.
Via Zoom.
Yes, you will. You're always here, but you're not here. It's different when you're here.
No question.
We feel
No
the
question of
love.
that.
We feel the vibe. It's a good vibe when you're
And-
here.
And I do think you might pay a little more attention than you do some years when the schedule's out, only because of the uniqueness. The Stockholm trip coupled with the Olympic break is going to create some compression in their schedule.
Yes.
That even is above and beyond compression in, for example, last year they had a break for the Four Nations.
Yes.
Right?
They were off for about 2 weeks.
Yeah. The Olympic break is equal as long. Plus, you're going to have some space on either side of that trip to Stockholm. So jamming in those other games, there's going to be a lot of unique quirks in the schedule.
Usually the teams that return from those overseas trips, they get basically the entire next week off. Like the Predators may play, they're playing 2 games, right? They're playing 2 games in Sweden. Once they get back, they'll be off for like a week.
Yeah.
Like that's usually how it happens.
Unfortunately, the last time they did that, they won the 2 games against the Sharks
at the start of the
Prague,
season.
Came back and they were terrible for the next couple weeks. And, you can't make excuses, but they were awful. And it set the whole season behind the 8 ball. And we know how it turned out. As it ended up, they made the big 4 trades and they started resetting some things
by my
in the
count,
transition to Barry Trotz.
By my count, after winning those 2 games to start the season in Prague, they lost 7 of 8 after they returned from Prague.
And didn't look good. You can have a stretch where you don't win much, but they just didn't play well. They I don't know if it was jet lag or whatever. They lost the mojo in a big way. Hopefully that will not happen this time. But it is going to be a challenging schedule. And I have felt that in the Western Conference, with Seattle coming into the league and now Utah in the league, in the division of the Predators, that the travel has even added a layer of odyssey. It's not easy. The grind of the schedule is a lot. So when it's compressed, I think there's going to be some tough stretches on the road.
So in 5 minutes, Predators fans, you will have the entire schedule for the upcoming season, but that'll do it for us today. Also in 5 minutes, the start of the Chase and Big Joe show live from Atlanta. SEC Media Days coverage sponsored by Brewhouse South. Experience Nashville's ultimate sports and brew hangout at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey live on Chase and Big Joe at 12:45. So do not miss that. On behalf of Derek, be loved, love on your people. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 9. Peace.